Thank you. Mr. Hanna.
Thank you. I want to concur with Mr. Perry. The divergence between the practical and the real world and the theoretical world, to me, as I listen to this conversation from all of you, could not be greater. I've heard accusations, Ms. Ferro, that you don't use science, that your opinions are subjective, they sound somewhat value-based, that in fact there's some data mining, that long-haul trucking for the 8 hours, it may be applicable to ask someone to rest for half an hour, but for the concrete, the asphalt, the aggregate delivery system, it has no bearing, and yet we're perfectly comfortable costing these people tens of, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars over time, when it would be a simple fact you could just exclude them from the process, local deliveries like that. You've heard Mr. Stocklin accuse the CSA of being impractical. You've heard Mr. Hinkle say it's impractical. What these people are saying is they want to be safe, they want to run a tight, competent business. Their insurance companies, believe me, have more of a hammer over their head than you ever will. We've heard the sheriff from, rather the state policeman, say that none of this may help or may not help without a way to monitor these people on a regular and scientific basis through these truck-mounted devices, GPS devices, et cetera. All of this makes me feel as though we're creating a whole host of rules, confining a whole lot of people to do less, make less, cost the public more, and without doing the one thing that I thought we were charged to do, and that is to do a study before we write the rule. Aren't you concerned, Ms. Ferro, that applying all of this, and arguably it isn't all this way, in fact, before applying these rules before the study is complete actually undermines the credibility of you and your agency?
There is a significant amount of research and study behind the rule that is taking effect July 1. Let me be very clear about that. It's substantial. It's a full body of peer-reviewed research and analysis. It is in the rule that was published. We incorporated it into our NPRM. When we issued the NPRM, we held an enormous number, a really unprecedented number of listening sessions.
Don't their opinions count?
Their opinions count a great deal.
Well, where do they count? You said you've listened to hearings. Apparently, they don't count, because Mr. Hinkle's sitting here telling you none of this is going to not only make things safer, but not to paraphrase you, but it may make things worse. It may make the public pay more. That in his case, where asphalt, and I assume also asphalt and concrete and other local deliveries are completely irrelevant to what you're trying to talk about.
No,
and have you ever done a study about concrete specifically or asphalt specifically?
So two things. The relevance of what I'm doing is all about safety, saving lives. The fact that the agency has been tremendously transparent and responsive to a host of concerns that were raised. That's why we went out and did listening sessions across the country. We heard a great deal of input. This rule started out with the option of a 10 to 11-hour drive time. We weren't sure. We had our finger on 10. Our research, our analysis, our listening sessions all led us to conclude the 11-hour driving time is the right time, and in fact, it cut the cost of the rule by $500 million.
Have you studied Mr. Hinkle's business?
Mr. Hinkle's business has the opportunity to take advantage of a 24-hour restart. They already have an exception in law that provides him the flexibility that he wants.
Mr. Hinkle, would you like to respond to that?
Well, it's the 30-minute break that we're concerned with. 30 minutes consecutive is going to be a problem for our industry, where they get, several breaks shorter than that, I think are sufficient to keep their fatigue level down.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so the 30-minute break is a body of scientific research that goes well outside of the trucking industry, any sort of workplace science. But back to your original point, the concept and the challenge of this one-size-fits-all, I think that's at the heart of much of what you've heard. I understand that. This is a very big industry. It's a very diverse industry. It's 500,000 companies that we regulate across the country, some private, some for hire, some hauling steel, some operating locally within a 20-mile radius doing concrete. The agency, long before I was here, tried about 15, 20 years ago to do a rule that segmented out the sectors, that recognized that short haul had a different operating environment, construction had a different operating environment, oil fields. And that was roundly panned. That thing didn't even see the light of day beyond the NPRM. I'm not saying that that shouldn't be examined again. And my sense is, with the use of electronic logging devices, with improved registration requirements, we'll be able to look again at that concept of segmentation. But today, it's absolutely true. The best structure we can use is a rule that constrains the margins of abuse while still sustaining the vast majority of today's operation in a very healthy and productive way.
Thank you, ma'am. My time's expired.